In the dark void above Viridia, a solitary figure watched as stars blinked silently against the eternal night. Major James Ford stood at the command bay's viewing port, his reflection a ghostly mirage upon the glass, the weight of impending war etching deep lines across his brow. Below him Viridia, a planet cradling humanity's hopes, shimmered like a gem against the black canvas of space. Each flickering light on the surface was a home, a life, a reason to stand firm. But as the shadow of the Draconis fleet crept ever closer, James felt the familiar clutch of dread tighten around his heart. This was more than a battle for territory. It was a fight for survival. Viridia was not just any colony. It was a masterpiece of human ingenuity and determination, a bustling metropolis that bridged the old-world charm with futuristic promise. Skyscrapers soared like spires of light, piercing the pink skies, while lush green belts wove through the cityscape like veins of life. Hovering cars zipped between the buildings, their trails glowing softly in the twilight. At ground level, the streets buzzed with energy. Markets thrived with the chatter of diverse species. Children played in the parks, their laughter a melody against the hum of robotic vendors. James's gaze shifted back to the stars, each one a distant sun, oblivious to the struggles of the tiny lives beneath them. He had seen many planets, fought over territories that spanned the galaxy, but Viridia was different. It was hope personified. And now, as the Draconis threat loomed, that hope was under siege. The command center buzzed behind him, a hive of activity as officers and aides prepared for the inevitable. The air was thick with tension, the scent of ozone and coffee mingling in a heady brew. Screens blinked with incoming data, strategic maps updating in real time as the outer sensors picked up the faint signatures of the approaching fleet. Major Ford, a voice cut through the cacophony, sharp and urgent. James turned from the window, his eyes locking with Lieutenant Walker, his second in command. The younger man's face was taut, his usual easygoing smile replaced by a grim line. "The latest recon reports are in," Walker said, handing over a datapad. "It's as we feared. The Draconis main fleet has entered the system. They're faster than we predicted." James took the pad, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. The images displayed were stark. A mass of ships, sleek and lethal, each one bristling with weaponry. His mind raced, tactics and countermeasures flashing through his thoughts as he weighed their options. "We need to shore up our defenses. Mobilize the ground units and get the air squadrons on high alert," James ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Walker nodded, turning on his heel to relay the commands. As the lieutenant moved away, James felt a solitary moment of peace amidst the storm. He looked out at Viridia once more, the planet's beauty a stark contrast to the dark designs of war. In this moment, he made a silent vow, not just to defend this planet, but to protect the life it cradled, whatever the cost. This was more than his duty. It was a personal war, one he would not lose. As the first alarms began to sound, echoing through the corridors of the command center, Major James Ford braced himself for the battle ahead. The fight for Viridia had begun, and he was at the heart of it. The Draconis fleet, a dark tide of steel and shadows, moved with relentless precision towards Viridia. At its heart, the command ship, vast and imposing, loomed like a harbinger of doom. Inside its cold metal walls, Commander Staler stood before a hollow map of Viridia, his eyes glowing with a fierce, unyielding light. The map pulsed beneath his touch, continents and oceans rendered in eerie luminescence. Around him, the air was charged with the electric buzz of alien technology, the scent of ionized particles hanging heavy. "Begin the encirclement," Staler commanded, his voice echoing metallically through the command center. His officers, beings of varying shapes and formidable sizes, acknowledged with a series of harsh, guttural sounds. They were a species known for their tactical acumen, their lives devoted to the expansion of the Draconis dominion. For Staler, this was not merely another conquest, but a necessary assertion of their superiority. Meanwhile, back on Viridia, James convened with his closest advisors in the war room. The walls were lined with digital screens, each one displaying different aspects of the planetary defenses. The room was alive with a nervous energy, the air thick with anticipation and fear. James stood at the head of the table, his expression grim as he addressed his team. "We have less than a day before the Draconis fleet reaches our airspace," he stated, pointing to a blinking dot on one of the screens. "Our primary goal is to protect the civilian sectors and maintain control of our air defenses. Every unit must be ready to mobilize at a moment's notice." Lieutenant Walker, alongside Technical Officer David, nodded in understanding. David, a young man with a brilliant mind for warfare technology, adjusted his glasses before speaking up. "We've upgraded the anti-aircraft batteries with the latest EMP tech. It should give us an edge against their first wave." James considered this, his mind racing through various scenarios. "Good. Make sure those units are positioned strategically. I don't want any gaps in our coverage," he instructed, his tone leaving no room for error. As the meeting adjourned, the team dispersed, each member set to prepare their respective divisions. James took a moment to himself, gazing out a nearby window at the city below. The setting sun cast long shadows over the buildings, the light flickering off the glass surfaces and creating a mosaic of gold and amber. It was a stark reminder of what was at stake, the beauty and peace of Viridian life, now threatened by the dark cloud of war. Back on the Draconis command ship, Staler observed the final preparations for the assault. His ship was a marvel of military engineering, equipped with devastating weaponry and shielded by a near-impenetrable armor. But it wasn't just the technology he relied on. It was the fear and chaos his presence instigated. "Engage cloaking devices," he ordered, watching as his fleet became mere shadows against the cosmos, "and deploy the harbingers." At his command, smaller vessels, sleek and fast, detached from the main fleet, each tasked with a specific target on Viridia's surface. As night fell on Viridia, the first signs of the impending invasion began to materialize. Distant explosions lit up the horizon, each flash a heartbeat, each rumble a warning. James received the first reports of the harbingers' landings, his heart sinking with each confirmation. "This is it," he murmured to himself, steeling his resolve. No retreat, no surrender. In his command center, surrounded by his loyal crew, James prepared for the longest night of his life. The battle for Viridia was not just a test of military strength, but of human spirit and resolve. As dawn broke over Viridia, the harsh light of morning laid bare the scars of the night's skirmishes. Smoke rose in lazy spirals from the smoldering ruins of what had been a series of outlying defensive installations. Inside the central command bunker, the atmosphere was thick with urgency. Major James Ford surveyed the room, his eyes pausing on each face. Trust had always been implicit among his team, but the stakes had now magnified every shadow, turning every whisper into a potential threat. Lieutenant Walker approached, his steps echoing slightly in the tense silence that followed another report of lost communication with one of the outer posts. "Major, we've got a situation," he began, his voice low. "There's a pattern in the attacks that doesn't add up. It's like they knew exactly where to hit us where we were weakest." James's jaw tightened. "Are you suggesting what I think you are?" he asked, already dreading the answer. Walker nodded gravely. "I think we might have a mole, sir. Someone inside is feeding them intel." The possibility hung in the air like a toxic cloud. James felt a chill run down his spine. Betrayal within his ranks was a scenario he'd hoped never to face, especially not when unity was their strongest weapon. "Keep this quiet, Walker. Start discreet inquiries. I want a list of suspects by the hour." Meanwhile, miles above aboard the Draconis command ship, Commander Staler received updates with a grim satisfaction. The initial strikes had sown confusion and fear, just as he had intended. Watching the holographic display flicker with each report, he turned to his communications officer. "Continue monitoring their channels. The chaos will soon escalate, and when it does, we strike harder. Back on Viridia, David worked feverishly in the communications hub, attempting to patch up the compromised channels. The young tech officer, with his keen eye for patterns, started to notice anomalies in the data streams. These weren't just external attacks, there were signs of tampering from within. With a growing sense of unease, he compiled his findings, the evidence painting a troubling picture. He brought his concerns to James, adding to the heavy burden the Major already carried. "Sir, I've noticed irregularities in our secure lines. It looks like someone has access that shouldn't." James met David's gaze, seeing the same worry reflected back at him. "Thank you, David. This confirms Walker's report. It's time we tighten security. No one in or out without clearance, and I want surveillance on everyone." As night approached, the whispers of betrayal grew louder. James and Walker met in secret, the list of suspects laid out before them. Names of men and women they had fought beside, trusted with their lives, now shadowed by doubt. "We need to handle this delicately," James murmured, his finger hovering over a name he had never hoped to see. "Start with the communications officers. Keep it quiet. Trust is delicate, and we can't afford to break it." Not now. The subsequent hours were a meticulous dance of suspicion and necessity. James found himself second-guessing decisions he would have once made without hesitation. Each order given, each piece of information shared was now a calculated risk. In the still of another sleepless night, James wrestled with the weight of command. The fate of Viridia rested on his shoulders, a burden made heavier by the invisible enemy within. Trust, once the cornerstone of his leadership, now felt like the greatest casualty of this war. As the first light of dawn crept across the command center, James steeled himself for the battles to come. Both the enemy at their gates and the traitor in their midst would need to be faced. But first, he needed proof, undeniable and irrefutable. The war for Viridia was now being fought on two fronts, and victory on either was anything but certain. The horizon of Viridia was a canvas of chaos, painted with streaks of crimson and orange as dawn broke. The Draconis fleet, once hidden by the cloak of night, now manifested visibly in the skies, casting long, oppressive shadows over the cities below. Major James Ford stood at the forefront of the command center, his gaze fixed on the live feeds from the city's surveillance drones. Each image told a story of encroaching doom, the Draconis ships descending with terrifying precision, their cannons primed for destruction. As the enemy began their calculated siege, James coordinated Viridia's defenses with a fierce determination. The city's air raid sirens wailed, a haunting symphony that sent civilians scurrying for the safety of underground shelters. Above ground, James's troops took their positions, their faces set in grim resolve. The air was thick with the smell of ionized particles, a prelude to the storm of energy weapons that would soon light up the sky. "Lieutenant Walker, status report," James commanded, his voice cutting through the buzz of frantic communications. "All anti-air defenses are operational, Major. EMP cannons are charged and ready." "We're as ready as we'll ever be," Walker reported, his eyes darting between the screens and his commander. James nodded, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. "Focus our defenses on Sector 7. That's their likely entry point. I want no breaches." As the first wave of Draconis fighters swooped down, their sleek forms glinting menacingly in the sunlight, the EMP cannons roared to life. Bolts of charged energy arced through the sky, creating a dazzling, deadly light show. Several enemy fighters were caught in the blasts, spiraling down in flames. Cheers erupted from the human soldiers, a brief, defiant celebration amid the siege. But the victory was short-lived. From the larger Draconis ships, smaller, more agile assault units began to deploy, their designs optimized for urban warfare. They slipped through the EMP grid, their advanced shielding systems flickering against the pulsing energy. David, monitoring the situation from a tech station, updated James. "Major, Some of their units are adapting to the EMP bursts. I recommend switching to kinetic projectiles. Do it, and get me a direct line to all squadron leaders. We're going to need a more hands-on approach, James responded, his gaze never leaving the screens. The battle for Viridia's skies grew more desperate with each passing minute. The ground shook under the relentless barrage of Draconis artillery, the once vibrant cityscapes turning to rubble. Amid the cacophony of war, James remained a pillar of calm, directing his forces with a precision that belied the turmoil within. Beneath the surface, in the dimly lit corridors of a makeshift intelligence unit, Walker pursued a different kind of warfare. The suspects of betrayal had been narrowed down, the security feeds and communications logs weaving a damning narrative. With a heavy heart, Walker approached James during a rare lull in the fighting. "Major, we have a lead on the mole," Walker whispered, handing over a tablet with the intercepted messages. James scanned the contents, his face hardening with each word. The betrayal was clear, a knife twisted deep into the heart of their defense efforts. "Prepare a team. I'll handle this personally," he said, the words tasting like bile in his mouth. As the sun set over a battered Viridia, casting long shadows over the debris-filled streets, James led a small contingent of trusted soldiers through the labyrinth of the command center. They moved silently, efficiently, until they reached their target, a nondescript room deep within the intelligence wing. Inside, they found their suspect, a young communications officer who had served under James for years. The confrontation was brief but intense, the betrayal laid bare amidst the flickering lights of the command center. With the traitor in custody, James returned to the front lines, his resolve hardened. The siege of Viridia raged on, but now cleansed of deceit, his forces stood united. The battle would be long, and the night full of terrors, but they would face it together, as one. The night enveloped Viridia in a suffocating embrace, punctuated by the relentless roar of Draconis artillery. Major James Ford, back at the command post after confronting the traitor within, watched the holoscreens displaying the ongoing chaos. Each explosion that rocked the city's foundation seemed to echo the turmoil in his heart from the betrayal. Yet, with the cancer excised, a new determination fueled him. Now was the moment to act, to seize the initiative back from the enemy. "David, initiate the sequence we discussed," James commanded, his voice a calm force amid the storm of battle. David nodded, his fingers flying over the luminescent control panel. "Activating the seismic disruptors now, Major. If our calculations are correct, we'll shake them up quite literally." Beneath the city's streets, hidden from both citizen and invader alike, lay a network of seismic disruptors, originally installed for geological research. Repurposed as a weapon, they were now set to deliver a concentrated shockwave directly beneath the advancing Draconis ground forces. The ground trembled violently, a rumble that grew into a roar as the disruptors fired in synchrony. Draconis troops, caught off guard, stumbled as fissures cracked open, swallowing a number of their armored units. The disruptors, while non-lethal, effectively halted the enemy's advance, buying precious time for James's forces. With the enemy regrouping, James turned to his aerial squadron leaders, who awaited his orders, their expressions a mixture of resolve and fatigue. "This is our window. Launch the counter-offensive. Target their main artillery units. Use everything we've got." As the human fighters soared into the night sky, the command center buzzed with a renewed energy. James watched the screens intently, every successful strike against the Draconis artillery sparking a flicker of hope. The aerial offensive, combined with the disruption on the ground, began to turn the tide, the rhythm of the battle shifting palpably. Meanwhile, on the Draconis flagship, Commander Staler watched the unexpected turn of events with a cold fury. "Enhance ground support. Deploy the Titan-class mechs," he ordered, his voice devoid of emotion. The Titan mechs, towering constructs armed with devastating firepower, were his trump card, rarely used for fear of escalating conflicts to an unwelcome level. Back on Viridian soil, as the first of the Titan mechs began their descent from the Draconis carriers, James prepared his next gambit. Walker, it's time. Deploy the Phantom Squad. The Phantoms, a special ops team equipped with cloaking technology, moved like ghosts through the city's ruins. Their mission was critical: infiltrate the enemy lines and sabotage the Titan mechs before they could fully operationalize. Each step was fraught with danger, but the Phantoms, under the cover of darkness and silence, reached their targets. Explosive charges were placed with surgical precision, the subsequent detonations lighting up the night as one by one, the Titan mechs became towering infernos. The success of the Phantom Squad brought cheers in the command center, a rare sound in the grim proceedings of war. Yet, James knew the battle was far from over. The Draconis forces were reeling but not defeated. He needed a final push, a decisive blow to end the siege once and for all. Prepare for the last strike. Target the flagship. It's now or never, James declared, rallying his forces for what he hoped would be the concluding act of the battle. As dawn approached, painting the sky with the first light of morning, the last of the human fighters took to the skies, their payloads aimed at the heart of the Draconis command. The battle for Viridia, long and tortuous, was reaching its climax. As the first light of dawn streaked across the horizon, tinting the darkened sky with hues of orange and purple, Major James Ford stood resolute within the bustling command center. The air was thick with anticipation, charged with the electric pulse of impending victory or defeat. The final assault on the Draconis flagship was not just a military maneuver, it was the culmination of every sacrifice, every loss, and every small victory along the way. The command center was alive with activity, each officer and technician playing their part in this orchestrated chaos. James's gaze was locked on the large tactical display, where the silhouettes of human fighters danced around the imposing structure of the Draconis flagship. Each successful hit was a beat in the rhythm of impending victory, each miss a palpable tension that tugged at the room's collective heart. "Lieutenant Walker, report," James called out, his voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions churning within him. Walker approached, his face etched with fatigue and smoke. "Major, the initial strikes have breached the flagship's outer defenses. Our fighters are moving in for the final run." James nodded, feeling a surge of pride for his team. "Keep the pressure. Tell them not to let up." This ends today. Outside, the skies of Viridia bore witness to a ballet of destruction and strategy. The human fighters, nimble and determined, wove through the anti-aircraft fire spewing from the Draconis flagship. Each pass, each maneuver was a testament to the pilot's skill and the desperation of a planet defending its freedom. Back aboard the Draconis flagship, Commander Staler watched the attack unfold with a growing realization of his peril. The human forces, underestimated at every turn, were now on the brink of dismantling his command. With a snarl of defiance, he issued his last commands, desperate to repel the assault and maintain his grip on the invasion. But on Viridia, hope was being rekindled. Amidst the rubble and the ruin, civilians and soldiers alike felt the tide turning. From the underground shelters to the battle-scarred streets, whispers of the battle's progress spread like wildfire, igniting spirits and bolstering morale. David, amidst a bank of monitors and controls, relayed real-time data to the fighters, his role pivotal in navigating them through the Draconis defenses. "Focus on the central core," he advised over the comms. "That's their weak spot." As the final squadron made its approach, the command center held its breath. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of equipment and the distant muffled echoes of explosions. Then, as the fighters' missiles struck true, piercing the heart of the Draconis flagship, a cheer erupted so loud it seemed to shake the very walls of the command center. James watched as the flagship's lights flickered and died, its descent towards the planet's surface a slow, inevitable fall. He felt a profound relief wash over him, mingled with sorrow for the cost at which it came. "Major, we've done it," Walker said, placing a hand on James's shoulder. "Viridia is safe." James nodded, his eyes sweeping over the team that had become his family. "Yes, we've done it. Thanks to every one of you." The victory was not just a military success, it was a beacon of hope for Viridia and beyond. It signaled that even in the face of overwhelming odds, resilience and unity could prevail. In the days that followed, Viridia began the slow process of reconstruction. Streets were cleared, buildings rebuilt, and lives slowly pieced back together. James, hailed as a hero, knew the true credit lay with the brave souls of Viridia, those who fought, those who fell, and those who would carry the stories forward. As he stood looking out over the city he had helped save, the dawn broke fully, bathing Viridia in a new light. A new dawn, a new beginning.